Spadone, I want to dive into the Golden State Warriors. So, of course, play tonight against Oklahoma City on the road, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock Warriors live right here, 95.7 The Game. And huge. Something that Steve Kerr was talking about yesterday with Willard and Dibbs, and essentially everything that is surrounding the Warriors right now has to do with their lineups. It's starters, it's closers, it's rotations, and it's pretty much outside of Stephen Curry right now. It feels like they might be having tryouts. Like, these guys are trying to figure out where they fit in 2 through 10, and it's not easy to be the head coach right now and make those choices.
It's very Stephen Curry, and then who else is stepping up tonight, right? If you're hoping to win.
Yeah.
And that is not a recipe for success. We saw that many a time with LeBron James the last decade, with the Cavs, with the Lakers. Like, hey, if Anthony Davis isn't playing, it's LeBron. And and to his credit, Draymond Green's actually been pretty damn good this year when he's on the court, not doing rear naked chokeholds a la Road Dogg or Jesse James. So, it's frustrating for Warriors fans to see the young guys play well too, and then not get rewarded later on. Like Jonathan Kuminga, I would be shocked if he didn't get a decent amount of run in tonight's game against the Thunder. A young, long, athletic team that likes to go up and down. I mean, he should get run, right? But in the past, we've seen this. Kuminga shines a little bit, and then he gets lost. There's a DNP. There's 5 to 10 minutes. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team adjusts going forward. And I know you're going to play the comments here from Steve Kerr, and he's been talking about it a lot more than he ever has about doing a little tinkering here a la Santa Claus's workshop.
I like that. I mean, 'tis the season, to be honest with you.
It is. Happy Hanukkah to all of you who celebrate Hanukkah.
By the way, Steve Kerr also believes that Shohei Ohtani is going to be a San Francisco Giant as a Dodger fan, so there is that.
What's weak sauce? Come on, Steve. What kind of rival are you? Rooting for the Giants to get him? Come on.
See, and this is where, I love Guru. I hope he's listening right now, because Guru has kind of taught me about this tactic. It's something called reverse devil tongue.
The reverse jinx. He likes to call it devil tongue. It's the reverse jinx. I invented it.
Thank you. Yeah. So, the Lakers are not going to win the championship this year is what you've been saying all season.
They lost. They were supposed to lose yesterday.
Yeah, that was a reverse jinx brought to you by Joe Spadoni. Steve Kerr, yesterday on Willard and Dibbs, talking about what exactly has been going on with this team and the question that everyone's been wondering about, a potential starting lineup change.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. And I have to feel that. And, I talked to the team about that as well. We want to give our guys lots of confidence and lots of rope, but we also need to challenge them and make sure they understand that there's always a guy behind them. So, as a coach, I try to figure out that balance and communicate with the team as best I can and communicate with individuals and get everybody playing at their best level.
Well, there's a couple things from that I think are pretty interesting. Number one, I don't know from Steve Kerr when talking about starting lineup changes. It's something I got to feel out is what he said.
I don't know!
Basically, yes, thank you, Go. I don't know about the starting lineup. And it sounds like he's in a place that a lot of fans are, Spadone, and media members essentially saying there are young guys that are going to push members of the current starting lineup, and they need to know that on a given night, if they don't have it, and I think this is the most important part of the last couple of games in which we've seen Moses Moody, Brandon Podziemski, and Jonathan Kuminga at various points close basketball games. It's not that the young guys have been so good, just only. It's been also that the veterans have not played well and do not deserve or have not shown that they're capable of winning a basketball game down the stretch with how they're playing. It's more of a night in and night out basis, and that's why Steve Kerr has been introduced to what I think is finally the real NBA for the Warriors.
Well, yes, and he's finally calling out his team for not playing well. Like, there's only so much Steve Kerr can do, and I hate that he gets the brunt of all this from a lot of Warriors fans. Oh, it's Steve Kerr's fault. It's not his fault that Andrew Wiggins has been non-existent this year after getting paid. He missed 2 months last year, and I don't know what was going on in his personal life, but this year, it's been a major disappointment for Andrew Wiggins. He's averaging 12 points, 4, but this is the worst he's ever played in his career. Evan, you can't have that. Not when he's supposed to. He's 28 years old. He's in his prime.
Well,
Klay Thompson, is he in his prime anymore? That's another conversation maybe for another time if he continues to play like this. But Klay Thompson and Steiny's been on this with you. I understand, if fans getting frustrated with Klay. He's making a lot of money. It's the last year of his deal. He's in a contract year. He's had 2 major injuries. Like, I could understand Klay not living up to the expectations of the past that this fan base maybe has bestowed upon him. But Andrew Wiggins, like, this needs to be a wake-up call for him when your head coach is going out of his way to say, you know what, yeah, maybe we do have to start taking a look at the starting lineup. And I don't know if he goes to Andrew Wiggins right off the bat, or it is Klay Thompson, but it's both of those guys. It's time for them to have some wake-up calls, and more specifically Andrew Wiggins, because it's got to be frustrating to watch guys like Moody, who you referenced, guys like Pajemski, guys like Jonathan Kuminga, consistently, when they're on the court, play with fire, play with energy, playing with, I don't know, like they care about the game of basketball. Like, that matters to the fans. And when you see a guy like Andrew Wiggins playing like this, it's just frustrating to watch, and knowing that Moses Moody could be taking those minutes if you're not going to be doing anything out on the court there.
Well, Moses Moody or Kuminga or Chris Paul now, who's back and healthy, like there are guys that can push for minutes, and I think Paul's in the conversation too, potentially about starting.
Oh yeah,
but
he's another older guy. Like, he slows the pace down for me. I don't know if I necessarily want that going forward.
But I also think the starting lineup is intrinsically connected to who closes, and to me, now whether you believe Chris Paul is someone that slows the game down, that's evident. I mean, last year I think they were first or second in terms of pace, so like total possessions. This year they've been 19th. I think that's number one, they're a little bit older, but number two, you brought in a guy whose game is predicated on the half court, and that's Chris Paul, who's played most of the games. So there's that. But I also think that when you're talking about the connection between the starters and the closers, you don't bring up a discussion about a starting lineup change, or you don't give consideration to that unless there are multiple issues. So you brought up Andrew Wiggins, for example. I'm 100% with you. He's played beneath his own standard this year, of even inconsistency. Like, we know that for 9 of his 10 seasons, he's kind of fluctuated and floated, mainly in Minnesota, but he's been worse than that this season. He's been worse than every single year he's had thus far, especially in Golden State. Klay Thompson has not played well up to his standard post-injury. Not even I'm not talking about before the ACL and the Achilles. After he got injured, he has not played up to par. Kevon Looney, I also don't think is a guy that has played that well in the minutes that he's been allotted. We just don't necessarily notice it as much because he plays 20 minutes a game. I think the starting lineup has 3 spots right now in which there are guys on the bench that on any given night can challenge them to close games. Thus, you give consideration to if they should be starting. That's what I think we're talking about here.
And I like that he's finally realizing, you know what, it doesn't have to be set in stone. Like, and you mentioned at the top, this is the real NBA. Like, you look at the Lakers, you look at the Bucks, you look at a lot of these teams. They're doing a lot of different matchups just based on who's playing well, right? Like, right off the top, like the Lakers, they benched Austin Reeves, who was a starter in clutch moments. Now he's still closing games a lot of the time, but Darvin Ham's like, you know what? Don't call him Scam Reddish. Cam Reddish is playing well right now. He's giving us these looks defensively. I think this is what we want to do. D'Lo, he's accepting a bench role. Like, so there's ways you can do it and still be looked as a championship type of contender. It doesn't have to be this whole set in stone, set in our ways things. I understand you have set a precedent here the last decade plus, a decade of mostly excellence, but it wasn't the real NBA. Yeah. You had 3 of the greatest players of their generation, one of the greatest defenders, if not the greatest in the history of the NBA, 2 of the best shooters of all time. And then, oh, by the way, add Kevin Durant in that mix. So we said going into this season, Evan, this would be the most difficult and trying season of Steve Kerr's career, and it's proving to be that thus far. I don't know if he thought it would be like this early into December, but he's got his work cut out for him.
888-957-9570 is the number. Also the number for the Comcast Business text line. Evan Giddings and Joe Spadoni in for Matt Steinmetz and Gerald the Guru Johnson. Don't worry, the boys will be back on Monday to have a reaction to the 49ers as well as the Seahawks going toe-to-toe Levi's Stadium here on Sunday. But we're talking about the Golden State Warriors, and I want to hear from the fans out there if they believe that right now Steve Kerr, number one, should make a starting lineup change, and number two, if they think he will. If he has it in him to do so, if Steve Kerr is going to essentially renege on the loyalty conversations and the theme of loyalty that has carried him and this franchise to a dynastic 4-title run, to be loyal to these 3 guys. And now Steve Kerr has thrown Andrew Wiggins and even Kevon Looney to some extent in there because they were the guys that got them a major part of their 2022 championship a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, however you want to slice it. How do you make that choice? Do you think Steve Kerr will make that choice? And do you believe that he needs to? One thing I thought that was also interesting as far as kind of the differentiation between the starters and the closers. Kerr spoke on that with Willard Dibbs yesterday as well. Here's what he had to say.
Closing lineup really depends on, how the game's going and who's playing well and that sort of thing. I mean, generally speaking, it's been, the same guys closing, for years, the same key guys. But, so you're really talking about one decision. Do you play Loon to go big? Do you play, Chris Paul or Wiggs to go smaller? The end of the game is really, you have everything that's happened before to determine your decision. I like to have the same starting lineup night after night for continuity's sake, and I've been searching for that, as we've talked about. But if we don't show improvement, then we'll think about making a change in that regard too.
And I think that's really what we're talking about here is the closing lineup, because even when Clay and Wiggins have been great or Looney have been great, all this stuff, they also still had 2 20-plus point leads against Sacramento and Los Angeles, in which the starters were a big part of that. They just couldn't close the game. Their issue has been finishing games, even their wins, Spadone, up until I think it wasn't against Portland, but it might have been against their last, against the Clippers. That was the first time, I believe, this year that they covered a spread at home.
That's wild.
Now, they'd pushed, but I don't think that they had covered before then. And that, to me, is an indicator of a team, especially at home where you have everything going for you, that you cannot close basketball games in a way that gives both the team as well as the fans, which are part of it too, the confidence that you can consistently put together strong stretches, because that's what the Warriors haven't been, is consistent.
Well, is what you just described, Evan? It sounds a lot like what happened last year. Is this feeling familiar for a lot of Warriors fans right now?
For different reasons.
Different reasons, but it's the same result, right? Like, how many times last year did they snatch defeat from the jaws of victory? I look back at, they got swept against the bad Magic and bad Pistons last year. Sadiq Bey on line 1, I remember very well, right?
At that game.
You were at that game? That was a sick shot, by the way.
It was incredible.
Warrior legend, Sadiq Bey, by the way.
Well, and of course, Klay Thompson just gets his shot swept under the rug because he hits this fadeaway 3 from the corner, puts him up.
Yeah, I don't even remember that.
Exactly, because Sadiq Bey, it was so funny, too. Like, I took my friend to a game. He'd never been to a basketball game before, by the way. Sorry to digress. Never been to a game before, but we still talk about this game because...
It's an awesome game.
It was incredible, but he's not the biggest sports fan, so he's getting into it. It's a great game. He's going back and forth. He doesn't understand, the Pistons are bad, the Warriors are supposed to be good, all that stuff. But then Klay Thompson hit the shot, and the whole place goes crazy. My other friend who was at the game and took his shirt off, he was on the Jumbotron. He was throwing his shirt around. And then Sadiq Bey, to your point, just throws a dagger into the Warriors, and everyone just starts, leaving.
That's it.
And my friend goes, well, wait, it's over? I'm like, yeah, that's
night.
That's how it goes.
Did you expect them to be celebrating?
The air was just pumped out of the building. It was incredible. But you're right. That's the kind of moment that has seemingly happened more often than not to the Warriors now, going back to last season, even this season.
I almost felt like it was going to happen again. Then Steph hit the clutch shot at the end there. But I was like, is Shaedon Sharpe going to just hit 3 back-to-back three-pointers to close this game out and win the game? They didn't ultimately. But again,
it took a Blazers turnover in the backcourt.
They're playing a Blazers team without Jeremy Grant, who's one of their best players.
I think they're better
and
without
DeAndre Ayton. Yeah, it's they might be better without him.
But they're still the second worst team in the league.
Come on, man. This is what we're talking about here. And I get it. You look at their overall record, it's not the end-all, be-all with the Golden State Warriors. They're not done. No one's saying they're done this year. But it's just, it's frustrating to watch as a fan because it is a muddled-up Western Conference. It's not like outside of the Denver Nuggets, who I think are still on a tier above, even though they're kind of having their little struggles here and there.
They're sleepwalking.
They're sleepwalking, exactly. It's early. It's December. But we're having these, and it's actually, I'm glad these conversations are now happening with Steve Kerr this early, because it felt like a lot of last year was just denial whatever was happening, there was injuries. There was obviously the punch, the dark cloud hanging over the organization. But it's taken only 2 months now, maybe a month and a half. What is it? The end of October, the season started or whatever, for Steve Kerr to finally realize, oh yeah, this isn't a championship team if we're just going to keep things status quo. That is refreshing as a fact. I'm finally seeing Steve Kerr, he's starting to get it now when it comes to the young guys and the vets and things just not working and the shakeup needs to happen.
By the way, just a quick update on Shohei Ohtani, because there's been some rumors that have been swirling around social media. No, Alden Gonzalez of ESPN reporter source, Shohei Ohtani has not made a decision yet. He also added, that's not to say it won't ultimately be the Blue Jays or the Dodgers, but Alden Gonzalez's understanding is at this point a decision has not been made. So we'll keep you updated on the Ohtani sweepstakes as we move forward on Signing Guru.